All right, the first way to interact with the AWS service is via the console. So to do the console, I'm actually going to be doing it live now. Open a web browser and go to the aws.amazon.com. Can you guys see my browser?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So you click on the sign into the console. When you click on sign into the console, it's going to show you the interface like this. So if you have registered your AWS account, the root user that you use to sign in, that root user, I mean, that email that you use to create the account is what is referred to as the root user email. So you put the root user email there, and for me, it's trainings@thecornelis.com. Then once you put the root user email, you click on next, and you put in your password. So once you put in your password and click submit, it's going to log you into the AWS console. So if I click submit here now, it should log for you, it will log you to the console, but for me, because I do MFA, it's going to request my MFA. But if you are just open your account, all you should just see now is the console. Let me just put in my key. So everything being equal, it should take you to the management console. This is the first way or the first interface to interact with AWS services. So all the services that we are going to be discussing, you can interact with them via this console. Before we start talking about the console, let's look at the other way of interacting with the AWS account, with the AWS services. We have the interacting with the AWS services via the CLI. CLI is command line interface. When we are talking about command line interface, this is when you are using commands like a code to interact with AWS services. For you to be able to use command line interface with the AWS, there are some things that you need to get on your system. The first one is the platform that you're going to be using, which is the terminal, which is called the terminal. The terminal, when you go on your system, if you are using Windows comes with CMD, command line development, command prompts. It comes with command prompts. To search for the command prompt, if you just do CMD, it's going to open command prompt. But command prompt is as old as it is, which I hope you guys can see my command prompt, right?
Yes.
So command prompt, this is another way of interacting with AWS. So you're going to be writing code. You're going to be writing code like AWS, EC2, describe, all these things. Don't bother about them. I'm going to show you how to get all these things later. But in this now, you are going to be writing code. So if you don't want to use command prompt, there are other alternatives that you can use. Windows also have, they don't really use command prompt again. They have PowerShell, which is also you can use for, this looks exactly like terminal, command prompt. But if you don't like both command prompt and PowerShell, there are third-party tools that you can use. And that is the reason why I sent out a video yesterday to download Visual Studio Code. So if you have downloaded that Visual Studio Code, then you can also use Visual Studio Code to interact with that services. So when you open your Visual Studio Code, so Visual Studio Code now, like this, is doing two things. is doing the work of Notepad, you can use it. If instead of using Notepad, you can use Visual Studio Code. Notepad is normally seen as text editor. So if you need a text editor, you can use Notepad or you use VS Code. So if you need command prompts or PowerShell, you can still use Notepad. You can still use Visual Studio Code for it. So it's doing 2 in 1. So if you want to use Terminal on your Visual Studio Code, just click on these 3 buttons and go to Terminal, then click on New. So it's going to give you this terminal interface. For you, it's going to show like this. It's going to show like this. But if you want it to show like this, don't worry, when we get to solution architect, when we are going to be using this, or security engineer, cloud security, when we are going to be using this, then I'm going to show you how to make your own looks like this. But for now, you don't need anything. You don't need to worry about this because it's not part of the cloud practitioner. I'm only showing you this so that you can know that there's another way of interacting with AWS. And if you are using this method or to interact with your AWS, apart from this platform or this code that you need, there are also other things that you need to get. The first thing is the user identity. The user identity, you must first log into the AWS to get that user identity. So your user identity is also the username. So if you have used an email to create your, if you have used root to create, your email to create your AWS account, that is the user identity, and that is also a username. But the best practice of using cloud is that that email that you use to create your account, you should not use it for everyday activities. So when we go in deeper, I'm going to show you how to create another username. So this separate username is what you will be using for your day-to-day activities. So if you are interacting with AWS accounts or AWS services via this CLI or via terminal or command prompt, you must first provide that username when you are configuring the system. But if you do not provide the username when you are configuring the system will automatically default. It will change to default. It will set your username as default. But in reality, company will block you from using defaults if they know what they are doing. They will want you to use your specific username. Also, the other thing you need for the configuration of that CLI or the command prompt or the PowerShell is what is called the access key ID. The access key ID is like a credential that will be provided. I'm going to show you where to get all of those. It looks like this. So you must provide this. Then after this, you need another thing called the secret access key. And that looks like this. So all of these, you must provide them when you are configuring the system. Because before you can use the Visual Studio Code or command prompt or PowerShell, you have to make sure that this application is configured so that they can be able to use to interact with the AWS services. And I'm not going to show you how to configure it now because you don't need it. So don't stress yourself now. When we get to solution architect or security engineer, we are going to be configuring this. So for now, all you just need to know is that there are multiple ways of interacting with AWS. The first is command through the management console. Second is through the CLI, which is command line interface, and the third is through the SDK. So that is all you need to know for now. And let's look at if you are interacting with AWS through the SDK. This is how it looks. This is the work of developer, although in reality, as a cloud security engineer, cloud cybersecurity, you need to learn how to automate your process or automate your work, your task. So for you to automate your tasks, you're going to be learning some programming language. And the programming language that is very useful out there is Python. So this is a developer or a security engineer or a cloud engineer using Python to interact with AWS services. But all of this, don't sweat it, because you don't need that for cloud practitioner. But when we get to solution architect, cloud security engineer, we're going to be learning this. So these are the way to interact with AWS services. Now let's go back to the console and let's demonstrate our activities on the console. So back to the console. Now, this is the, you guys can see my console, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the console. Sure. This is the console. Once you log in, this is where it takes you to. So look at all of these diagram or widgets that I'm having on my system. You can rearrange these to make your life easier. So this is the default that AWS provides you. But you can move things around by yourself. All you just need to do is to put your mouse here, here, and drag. So you can change them anyhow you want, so that any service that you are using, or maybe you are using a particular application and you want to have it on the dashboard, you can move things around. So the first thing that I want to show you is any services that you are using every day, like you use it a lot. The best thing is to add them on top here, so that you don't have to be looking for them anytime you need them. So before here, now let's see, how do you see all the services on the AWS cloud? To see all the services on the AWS cloud, then go to service. If you look at this service here, when you click on it, it's going to show you all the service by categories. So if the service that you need is under analytics category, when you click it, it's going to show you all the services under analytics. If you need a service under compute, click on this and it's going to show you services under compute. And if you can't see it or you don't know it, you can actually search. You can search for a particular service by their name, or through keyword, or through an acronym. So for instance, let me say I want to search for a security tools, which I have heard somebody talk about data lake. Security lake. I don't know what it means. And you want to search for it, you can just use lake, and it's going to bring you all those services that have lake. This is searching by keyword. But if you know the full name, you can just search it directly, that security lake. Then it's going to bring it out for you, and you can see that it's selected. So you can click on the service here. So let's say the service you are looking for is relational database, which is called RDS. You can click on RDS and it's going to look for it. So this is how to search for a service. Now let's go back to how to see all the service that I was showing you earlier. So any service that you know that you use every day, the best thing is just to start the service. So when you go to a particular service, let's say I'm using this config every day and I don't want to be searching for it, I can just click this start button and it's going to add it to what I have here. So if I want to add another one, I can just go here. Let's say I want to add a service under my security. So I can say, okay, I'm going to like this security hub. Then when I click on this star, it's going to add it to the top here. So anytime now, even if I refresh, they see here, they don't go away, because now they have, I have bookmarked them on my system. So this way, when I need them, I can just click on them instead of going and be finding them everywhere. So if what you need, if you want to arrange this, if what you need is not here, you can actually remove widgets by clicking on it and remove. So let's say you don't want all of these on your system, you can remove all of them. But if you want to add a new one, maybe it looks too rough for you, you can remove everything. The one I like to have there is my pricing dashboard. So now I've removed virtually everything. So my board is clean. So now I can start adding them back based on the one I need. So I can look, okay, which one do I want? Okay, I want to know when AWS have a service issue. So I can put that here. I also want to know my pricing, cost and cost usage. I put that here. So you can arrange them based on or how you want them to look like. So I can look for, I can add more by, okay, I want the service trusted advisor. And if you don't want them like this, you can actually make them by clicking here and drag them so that they look very small instead of taking the whole space. So here is way of arranging your dashboard so that it makes your job easier for you and make your dashboard looks neat. So any questions from here before we go back to our presentation?
No.
Yeah,
Right.
just quick one. Just like you explained earlier, the services that we see in this console depends on the region that we're connected to, correct?
Depend on what?
It depends on the region that we are connected to.
Yes, exactly. So there, when we get to, maybe I don't know if it's in this cloud practitioner or solution architect, there are some service, we call them regional service, meaning that when you want to deploy that service, you have to select a specific region. But there are some service, they are called global, meaning that they don't belong to any region. When you are deploying them, it's available worldwide. But whichever one, if you want to select a specific region, you see here, just click this region here, click on the drop down, and these are all the regions. There are some regions that they are available by default, but there are some that they are not available by default. So all those ones in white, they are available. Then all these ones, they are not available. You have to go and enable them. So, but I'm going to show you where to enable them later. You don't really need to bother about that. So if I want, currently anything I'm deploying now is going to go to North Virginia, which is US East 1. If I don't want it here, maybe I want it in Asia. Maybe all my customers are in Asia, or maybe they are in Tokyo. I can just say, okay, I want it in Tokyo. So anything I'm deploying now is deploying in Tokyo. And is the when we get to where to select availability zone, I will show you. But the only thing you select here is the region. So it is when you want to deploy that service that you can now select an availability zone. I think that answers your question, right?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So let's go ahead. Before we go to, this is the end of the module 2, but before we proceed, let's test our knowledge on some of these questions. Do I have the knowledge here? Yeah. Okay. As an AWS cloud practitioner, you have been tasked to research the AWS global infrastructure elements that will best suit your company needs for storing backup data in multiple geographical areas doing transitions to AWS cloud. Which of the elements of AWS cloud, or which of the elements of AWS global infrastructure will you suggest? So when you're answering a question like this, you should look at the keyword. This one is specifically asking you that which element of AWS cloud, AWS global infrastructure will you suggest for storing backup data in multiple geographical areas? So what is our answer there?
Region.
Region. Because they are saying in multiple geographical areas.
Yeah,
This
because
suggests
region is worldwide.
region is not worldwide. Look at
I mean, it's global.
Say multiple geographical location that you want to store in this geographical location, you want to store in another geographical location. So that is region. When you're talking about different geographical location, that is region. But if they say in one geographical location, but in multiple data center, that should be availability zones. So let's look at the second one. The Cornelis Inc. serves IT. The Cornelis Inc. serves IT training content to users worldwide. To optimize performance of their website, they want to use a content delivery network. Which element of AWS Cloud, AWS Global Infrastructure will you advise them to use?
Edge location.
What? Edge location. Because they want to optimize. See, if you see anything, content delivery network is used, edge location is used to deliver content closer to the people. So if you look at the requirement, they say they want to serve content to their user worldwide, serve content to their user worldwide, and to optimize that performance of their website, they want to use CDN. So when you want to serve content to your user worldwide using CDN, you use edge location. I say, if you're not talking to the class, kindly mute yourself. So, sorry, instead of you, I want to mean your company have a requirement to ensure that their critical mission application is available to legitimate users 98% of the time. In order to achieve this, your company is thinking of migrating the applications to the cloud. Which of the elements of AWS Global Infrastructure should your company utilize to achieve these requirements?
Region.
Don't get it. Just the way to answer AWS question, you might actually know AWS and still fail their question. But if you are doing anything AWS question or exam, always look at the keyword. Always look at the keyword, because two answers might be the same, but they will give you like a best option or a keyword that will give you the right answer. This is saying that to ensure that the critical mission application is available to legit user 98% of the time. So what this tell you, for an application to be available 98% of the time, that means the downtime should be minimal. So what happens if you deploy the resources in a particular availability, in a particular data center, and that data center goes down? So for that not to happen, what will you do? You need to deploy the resources in multiple data centers. So if you are deploying the resources in multiple in multiple availability zones, so that if one availability zone, or if all the data center in the particular availability zone break down, then because they are not, two data centers are miles away from each other, so the other one will not be affected. So that is an availability zone there. When you are saying mission critical application need to be available all the time, when this is near all the time, if they need to be available all the time, that is what they call highly availability. So the purpose of using availability zone is to ensure or to achieve highly availability.
Time for.
So now, I think this is the question that some of you are looking for, so that you can see the answer and quickly pick. So which of the following best describe AWS edge location? Data centers for long-term storage, backup sites for AWS availability zone, alternative name for AWS region, or location for content delivery and network routing.
D.
B.
B. Backup
D.
site.
Easy.
B as in baby.
D.
Oh, D.
D as in dog.
Location
D.
for
D
content
as a
delivery
dog.
and network. Yeah. So anytime you see content delivery network, you are talking about edge location. So which of the following is an advantage that user experience when they move on-premises workloads to the cloud? Elimination of expenses. This is what we actually covered under benefits of AWS in the first class. And all these questions you are seeing here, they are actually coming from AWS itself, because these are they are some of the questions they have asked in the solution architect before, except the first 3.
But it looks like A kind of looks correct.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like.
Which of the
Do we have multiple answers here?
Kind
So
of.
let me quickly shift this thing. In one way that some people fail interview is that lack of confidence. When somebody is asking you a question on an interview, there are times that you say something that is not right, but when you say it with confidence, the person that is asking you that question will look like will be convinced. So when you are answering questions, always try not to use something like it looks like, I think, I guess. Stop.
I would say A. I would say A.
I would say all of the above because they look alike. They are saying the same thing.
Okay. So this is critical AWS questions. They give you solution, and all the solution might even be correct, but they are looking for the best option. So which of the following is an advantage that user experience when they move on-prem workloads to the cloud? Elimination of expense for running and maintaining of data centers. Yes,
C.
That is one. Then we have price discount that are identical to
Yes.
from hardware provider.
And there is
sure.
D too.
I would say B.
Sure.
Proud.
Distribution of all operational controls to AWS. C is totally wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So the person that say all of the above, you are wrong. Because when you are using the cloud, though your services are now with AWS, but when we get somewhere, we're going to be discussing what is called shared responsibilities. It is your responsibility and AWS responsibility to ensure the security of the cloud, and you are not shifting all that security to AWS. And in fact, the operational controls lies with the customers. Eliminate of operational expense. That is not true, because this is one of the costs that you incur when you move to AWS. Your capital expense or your fixed expense will now turn to operational expense. So by default, I will eliminate C and D. That is the best practice. Okay. Then I'm now left with 2. So which of these 2 is the best option? A.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, 6. Which factor would be considered when selecting a region? Proximity to the customer, access to 24/7 technical support, ability to assign custom permissions to different users, access to the AWS command line interface, compliance with data governance and legal requirements. You are asked to select 2. So this is how AWS asks that question.
A and B.
At times,
A and E.
A and
E.
Hold on, guys.
A and E, that's what I would choose.
So for those that want to do AWS exams, these are what you should be expecting. At times they will give you just one option. I mean, give you options to select just one. And at times they may ask you to select two. In solution architect, you might be asked to select three best options. So,
okay.
so here and what?
E.
I choose E. Yeah, and
Wait,
E.
I want
That's
to
what I
actually see those that are talking. I want to know those that are not talking. Okay, yeah, guys. A and
I'll
what?
choose A and E. A and E. That's what
A
I'll
and
choose.
E.
A and E.
E is right. I don't know.
I think I will be
know.
calling them these days. I'm seeing some people that are not even talking in the class. Okay. I've seen those people that their mic are on mute. Those that are talking. Those that mic are muted, they are like, I'm never going to answer this question. A and E.
A,
Correct.
there you go.
So, number 7, which statement best describe AWS, Amazon CloudFront? A service that can be used to run infrastructure in a hybrid cloud approach.
A.
A serverless compute engine for container. A service that can be used to send and receive message between software components through a queue or a global content delivery.
I'll say A.
A. So a lot of people. So this is why I always tell you that pay attention when I'm talking. When I was talking, when I was explaining edge location, I said
That's for
edge
delivery.
location, when you are using CloudFront, you need edge location. So edge location is normally used by two services in AWS. I talked about the CloudFront and I talked about Route 53, which I said we are not going to go deep into in this exam. But here is AWS question that is actually talking about CloudFront. So the answer is D, global content delivery. And you can now see that AWS have a lot of questions around edge location because it's very, very crucial. So which side does Amazon CloudFront use to cache copies of content for faster delivery of users at any location?
It's going to be region.
Cache content.
Edge location.
You see having edge location. So actually all the question is around edge location because it's so important.
That's crazy.
When you are caching a content, when I was explaining earlier that users in Africa, if they want to watch a movie posted in America, the first person that wants to watch that movie, the person will request the movie from the original source where it is kept in US. But once that person has requested it, the content is cached closer where that person is. So the next person that wants to watch the movie is not coming to the original source, but is going to the edge location where the content is being cached.
Therefore, that's true. Yeah.
All right, that is the end of module 2. Are we due for break now? No? All right.
No. But
I mean, you can if you want.
What about question?
Any question on global infrastructure, AWS global infrastructure?
Yes, I have a question.
All right, go ahead.
Well, in module 2, you talk about the AWS local zone, the wave zone and everything. So where would the server be deployed or the data center? Because there are like many data center. So where would they be deployed? It's like, would they be deployed at the client's premises or?
For which one? For which one?
Yeah, you talk about the wavelength zone. Then you talk about this one. What about I'm talking about the edge.
The edge
where
location.
Will it be deployed? Yes, where would the server be deployed?
So, okay, that's a very good one.
Since there's no region.
Yeah, there's no region. So this AWS just spread, they have sites, they call it sites. They have sites spread across the globe. So in that site, what they just have there is like just like a node called a server, just like a server, like multiple servers. That is the only thing they have there. They don't have other equipment or other services that forms an availability zone or that forms a local zone. So they only have node. So this is now the difference between the two of them: availability zone, local zone, and edge location. Availability zone is a full data center, multiple data centers together. Remember, in the availability zone, you have one or more data centers, but these are complete, fully functions data centers. So when we talk about edge, local zone looks like a availability zone, but it does not have all the capacity and all the capacity and fully functional resources of an availability zones. It only has some selected services like compute, like storage, like database, but it doesn't have all those other resources like machine learning, like data warehousing. So it has a limited functions or limited services. So compare that to edge location. Edge location does not have the capacity of the features of a local zone. What it only has is just like a server that is used to cache content. It's just an ordinary server, just like when AWS take one server and put it in different locations around the globe, so that anybody that is requesting services from a very far location, the content can go to that far location for the first time, but after that first time, it's going to take that content because somebody closer to an edge location has requested for that content. So it believes that somebody else closer to that same person will request the content in a feature type. So instead of that person, which is the feature person, to go to the original source again, is going to get it from the location that is closer, which is the edge location. I think that answers your question, right?
Yeah, that's my question. And the outpost. So the outpost is like, let me just try to explain from what you said. Like, we have a very important data that we want to keep at. It should be on premise. So we want you to deploy your server to our location. Is that not it? Why other data could be on your region or whatever? Is that not what you said?
Yeah, that's perfectly correct. So let me just add to that.
I just want to be sure.
Yeah, so outpost is just like, let's say you need a particular service and you don't want to deploy it on the public cloud. Then you can call AWS, say, hey, I need this particular service, but we have a requirement that we can't deploy it on the cloud. So, but we want to use your cloud. We want to use your service. So can you deploy this particular service in our on-prem? So it's only that service AWS is going to bring to your on-prem. So that is like taking a service to the customer. So this is specifically to that customer that requests it. But when we're talking about every other one, they are publicly available. The availability zone is publicly available. The local zone is publicly available for anybody to use. The edge location is publicly available for anybody to use. But the outpost is specifically requested by a customer. So you have to request for it. So AWS, come and deploy this thing in my on-prem. Then they will come. So that is outpost. And the last one, which is called wavelength, that is normally is normally embedded with data center of internet providers. So that is the only service that is made to speed or to boost the speed of applications that are running on phones. So those services or those servers that is serving those applications that are running on phone, they are embedded in the data centers of cloud providers, so that those applications can use the speed of those cloud or those internet provider to serve the users that need that mobile application. So anytime you see a content about mobile application speed or something like that, they are talking about wavelength. All right. So we're going to go for 1 minute, 5 minutes break now, then, so that by the time we come back, we just jump into the second module, which is called the cloud, Amazon Elastic Compute. So this is when we are now started getting to the AWS services. And this services is one of the most used service in the cloud. You will hardly go to any interview without being asked question on EC2. You will hardly see any job post without question or without knowledge of EC2, because this is where you can, this is a service that you can actually use for server in the cloud. So when we come back, we come and talk more about compute in the cloud. So another 5 minutes. So can you guys see the time now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you can see the time, let me pause the recording.